I'm Jade, 27 years old, the responsible daughter who always lived in my sister Caitlin's shadow. Growing up, I learnt to accept less attention, less praise, less everything. Last week at dinner, my world shattered when Caitlin screamed that I'd ruined their lives. The shocking part, my parents agreed. I didn't argue or cry. I simply left, closing the door on 27 years of trying to be enough. This morning, I woke to 14 missed calls on my phone. Let me know where you're watching from, and please subscribe to hear how this story unfolds. My childhood home in suburban Boston held the typical trappings of middle-class American life. A modest two-story colonial with fading blue paint, a backyard just big enough for weekend barbecues and family photos documenting our supposedly happy lives together. My father Thomas worked as an accountant at a local firm. He was a quiet man who valued order and predictability, wearing the same style of button-down shirts and bringing the same lunch to work for as long as I could remember. My mother Diana was a pediatric nurse, warm and nurturing to her patients, but somehow always emotionally distant at home. They were hardworking people who provided for our needs, but emotional validation was scarce in our household. I was their first child, planned and welcomed into a new marriage still finding its footing. For 4 years, I had their undivided attention. Not that I remember much from those early days, but family videos show a different father who played peekaboo and a mother who sang lullabies. Everything changed when I was 4 years old, and my parents announced they were having another baby. My sister Caitlin arrived after my parents had struggled with secondary infertility. They called her their miracle baby, a term I heard so often it became part of our family lexicon. From the moment she came home from the hospital, wrapped in a pink blanket my grandmother had knitted, Caitlin became the sun around which our family orbited. Jade, watch your sister became the refrain of my childhood. At 4, I was deemed responsible enough to alert my parents if baby Caitlin cried. By 6, I was fetching diapers and bottles. By 8, I was entertaining her while my parents rested from the exhaustion of raising their spirited child. Your sister needs these dance lessons, Jade. She has such natural talent, my mother explained when my own dance classes were cancelled to accommodate Caitlin's schedule. You understand, right? You're so mature for your age. I did understand in the way children accept the world presented to them as normal. When Caitlin needed a tutor, the money for my science camp disappeared. When Caitlin wanted to redecorate her room, I kept my faded wallpaper. When Caitlin threw tantrums at family gatherings, I was tasked with calming her, while my parents made apologetic excuses to relatives. She's just sensitive, they would say. Not everyone can be as level-headed as Jade. School became my sanctuary. I threw myself into academics, bringing home straight A's and joining every club that would have me. My report cards earned brief nods from my parents, while Caitlin's C's and D's prompted concerned conferences and hired tutors. Not everyone is academically inclined, my father would say, ruffling Caitlin's hair. Your sister has other gifts. Those other gifts seem to include an uncanny ability to be the center of attention. Caitlin developed into a social butterfly with a wide circle of friends. She was pretty in the conventional way that opened doors in high school, long blonde hair, bright blue eyes, and a laugh that drew people to her. Meanwhile, I grew into my gangly limbs, hid behind glasses and books, and made a few close friends who shared my interest in computers and science fiction. My relationship with Caitlin was complicated. I loved her. How could I not? She was my sister, and beneath her self-absorption, there were glimpses of genuine affection. She would crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, confide in me about school crushes, and occasionally defend me against schoolyard bullies. Only I get to pick on my sister, she once told a boy who had called me a nerd. But those moments of sisterly solidarity were interspersed with periods of resentment, competition, and hurt feelings. Caitlin seemed to intuitively understand that our parents favored her, and rather than feeling guilty about this imbalance, she wielded it as a weapon when it suited her. Dad will never believe you. She would taunt when I threatened to tell on her for taking my things without asking. She was right, of course. When college application season arrived, I spent countless hours on essays, scholarship applications, and part-time jobs to build my savings. I was accepted to MIT with a partial scholarship, a dream come true, that my parents acknowledged with a dinner at Olive Garden and a card signed by all 3 family members. 2 weeks later, Caitlin was accepted to Boston University with no scholarship. My parents threw a party, invited extended family, and announced they would cash out part of their retirement fund to ensure their daughter could attend her dream school without the burden of excessive student loans. I worked through college, taking on programming internships and campus jobs while maintaining my GPA. Caitlin joined a sorority, changed her major 3 times, and eventually dropped out in her junior year to find herself. College isn't for everyone, my mother said defensively when relatives inquired about Caitlin's academic status. She's exploring her options. After graduation, I landed a job at a software company and quickly moved up the ranks. My financial independence was a source of pride, even if my family seemed unimpressed by my career trajectory. At family gatherings, the conversation inevitably centered around Caitlin's latest adventure or crisis. Jade. Did you hear your sister is thinking about starting a clothing line? Isn't that exciting? My mother would ask while my promotion to senior developer warranted barely a mention. Despite everything, I continued to support my sister. When she couldn't make rent, I would secretly transfer money to her account. When she needed a new laptop for her latest business idea, I bought it for her birthday. When she totaled her car, I co-signed for a new one. I told myself I was being the bigger person that family sticks together. In reality, I was perpetuating a dynamic that would eventually break me. 3 years after college, my company opened a branch office in Boston. I decided to transfer back partly for the career opportunity and partly out of some misguided sense of family obligation. Perhaps proximity would finally earn me the recognition I craved from my parents. I purchased a small craftsman-style house in a developing neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but it was mine, bought with my savings and careful financial planning. The day I got my keys, I took a photo in front of the sold sign and sent it to my family group chat. My father responded with a thumbs up emoji. My mother asked if I had enough furniture. Caitlin didn't respond at all. A week after moving in, my parents invited me to Sunday dinner. I arrived to find Caitlin already there, regaling our parents with stories about her latest job at a boutique downtown. Jade, she squealed, embracing me as if we were the closest of friends. Your house looks cute. Smaller than I expected, but cute. Over pot roast and mashed potatoes, my father cleared his throat and looked at me significantly. Your sister has been having some financial difficulties. This wasn't news. Caitlin's financial difficulties were as constant as the changing seasons. We've been helping as much as we can, my mother added, but with retirement approaching, we need to be careful. I understood immediately what was happening. The baton of financial responsibility for Caitlin was being passed to me. How much, I asked, cutting to the chase. She has some credit card debt, my father said vaguely, and she's behind on rent. Caitlin looked down at her plate, the picture of contrition. I'd ask Ryan for help, but he's between jobs right now. Ryan was Caitlin's boyfriend of 3 months, a charming, perpetually unemployed musician who always seemed to have money for new guitar equipment, but never for rent or groceries. $10,000, my father finally admitted. The credit cards are threatening collections. I nearly choked on my water. $10,000? I know it's a lot, Caitlin said, tears welling in her blue eyes, the same theatrical display that had worked on our parents for years. But I promise I'll pay you back. Ryan has a big gig coming up and I'm due for a promotion. Against my better judgment, I agreed to help. Not the full amount, but enough to keep the creditors at bay. I set up a payment plan with Caitlin, created a spreadsheet for her to track expenses, and even offered to help her find a better paying job. For a while, things seemed to improve. Caitlin made the first 2 payments on time. She and Ryan moved in together into an apartment that I later discovered I was secretly helping pay for through my loan repayments to Caitlin. 6 months after my return to Boston, I received a call from a credit card company I didn't recognize asking about a late payment. Confused, I told them they had the wrong person. The representative confirmed my social security number and birth date. A sick feeling grew in my stomach as I asked for details about the account. It had been opened 3 months earlier. The address listed was Caitlin's apartment. I left work early that day and drove straight to my sister's place. I found her at home, lounging on a new leather couch I hadn't seen before. Did you open a credit card in my name? I demanded, forgoing any greeting. The flash of guilt across her face told me everything before she even opened her mouth. I was going to tell you, she said, sitting up. It was an emergency. Ryan needed equipment for his band, and they wouldn't approve me for any more credit. That's identity theft, Caitlin. It's a crime. Don't be so dramatic, she scoffed. We're sisters. Besides, I've been making the payments. Until you didn't and they called me, tears began to flow right on cue. I'm sorry, Jade. I've been so stressed. Ryan lost another gig and we're barely making rent. I was going to pay it, I swear. I wanted to be angry, to yell and demand justice. But decades of conditioning kicked in. Caitlin was the fragile one. Caitlin needed protection. Caitlin made mistakes, but her heart was in the right place. This can never happen again. I said firmly. I mean it, Caitlin. No more credit cards, no more loans in my name. I'll pay this one off to protect my credit score, but that's it. She nodded eagerly, wiping away tears. I promise. Thank you for understanding. You're the best sister anyone could ask for. I helped her create a budget that night. She seemed genuinely engaged, asking questions and taking notes. I left feeling cautiously optimistic that maybe, just maybe, this would be the wake-up call she needed. The following weekend, my parents hosted a family dinner. Caitlin announced she had enrolled in an online business course. I'm finally getting my life together, she declared proudly. My parents beamed at her. We always knew you would, my mother said, squeezing her hand. No one mentioned the identity theft. No one acknowledged my role in bailing her out yet again. It was as if Caitlin's decision to take one online course had erased all her financial misdeeds and poor choices. That night, I met Michael for our third date. He was a software engineer at a different company with kind eyes and a quiet confidence I found attractive. Over dinner, he asked about my family. I gave my standard response about having a younger sister and 2 loving parents. But something about Michael's attentive listening made me share more than I intended. My sister and I admitted, we have a complicated relationship. How so? He asked, genuinely interested. No one had ever really asked me about my feelings regarding Caitlin before. The floodgates opened, and I found myself telling him about the identity theft, the years of playing second fiddle, the exhaustion of always being the responsible one. Instead of the dismissal, I expected the usual, but she's your sister, or family is family. Michael listened thoughtfully. That sounds really unfair to you, he said when I finished. Have you ever talked to a therapist about your family dynamics? The question startled me. I had never considered that what I was experiencing might warrant professional help. That night marked the beginning of not just my relationship with Michael, but my journey toward recognizing the toxicity in my family relationships. 6 months into my relationship with Michael, my world imploded again. I received a letter from a collection agency about an overdue credit card payment, another card I never opened. This time the balance was over $15,000. With shaking hands, I pulled my credit report. There were not 1 but 3 credit cards opened in my name that I knew nothing about. My credit score had plummeted nearly 200 points. The mortgage refinancing I had been planning to lower my interest rate would now be impossible. I drove to Caitlin's apartment in a fog of disbelief and rage. She opened the door wearing new clothes, her hair freshly highlighted. You promised, I said, my voice barely above a whisper as I handed her the credit reports. She glanced at the papers, then had the audacity to look annoyed. I was going to fix it before you found out. Fix it, Caitlin. This is thousands of dollars of debt in my name. How exactly were you planning to fix it? Why are you making such a big deal? You earn 6 figures. This is nothing to you. I stared at my sister, truly seeing her for perhaps the first time. It's not about the money, it's about trust. It's about respect. Oh, please, she scoffed. You've always had it easier. Perfect grades, perfect job, perfect life. You owe me. I owe you, I repeated incredulously. How do you figure that? Mum and Dad always put so much pressure on me to be like you. Why can't you be more like your sister? Your sister never got in trouble. Do you know what it's like living in your shadow? I laughed without humor. My shadow? Are you kidding me right now? Every decision our parents ever made was with you in mind. Every sacrifice was mine to make so you could have what you wanted. That's not true. It is true, and you know it. I'm done, Caitlin. I'm calling the credit card companies and reporting fraud. I'm not covering for you anymore. Her face transformed from indignation to panic. You can't do that. I'll go to jail. You should have thought of that before committing identity theft. In the end, I didn't report her to the police. I couldn't bring myself to do it, despite Michael's gentle encouragement that it might be the wake-up call Caitlin needed. Instead, I froze the cards, worked out payment plans, and informed my parents what their younger daughter had done. My father sighed deeply over the phone. Can't you just pay it off for the sake of family peace? No, Dad, I can't, and I shouldn't have to. She's going through a tough time, my mother interjected from the extension. Ryan lost his job again, and they're behind on rent. That's not my problem anymore. I've helped enough. A heavy silence followed. Jade, my mother said carefully, family helps family. Caitlin needs support right now. And what about what I need? Has anyone ever asked me that? Another silence. We'll talk to her, my father finally said, though his tone lacked conviction. In the months that followed, I created strict boundaries. I stopped sending Caitlin money, declined invitations to family gatherings where financial discussions might arise, and changed all my passwords and security questions. My parents called regularly, their conversations thinly veiled attempts to persuade me to help your sister through this rough patch. I stood firm, focusing instead on rebuilding my credit and my relationship with Michael, who supported me unconditionally. In September, Caitlin called to announce her engagement to Ryan. Despite my misgivings about their relationship, I congratulated her. Then came the ask I should have anticipated. We're thinking about a spring wedding. Nothing fancy, just 200 of our closest friends at the Ocean View Resort. The Ocean View is one of the most expensive wedding venues in Massachusetts. Sounds nice, I said non-committally. So as my maid of honor, I was hoping you could help with the finances. You're the successful sister after all. I almost dropped the phone. Caitlin, I'm not paying for your wedding. But I can't afford it. Then choose a different venue, or a smaller guest list, or wait until you've saved enough. That's easy for you to say. You and Michael probably have tons saved for your wedding. Michael and I had been discussing marriage, but we hadn't announced anything publicly yet. We were planning something small and intimate, well within our budget. My relationship with Michael isn't relevant to this conversation. You're just being selfish again, Caitlin snapped. I ended the call only to have my mother ring me minutes later asking why I had upset my sister. Over the next few weeks, I discovered that Caitlin had been telling extended family members that I had promised to pay for her wedding. Cousins were asking about my generous gift. Aunts were praising my sisterly devotion. It was infuriating. During this time, Michael proposed during a weekend hiking trip. It was simple, beautiful, and exactly what I wanted. We told my parents over dinner the following week. That's wonderful, my mother said, though her enthusiasm seemed forced. Have you set a date? Next fall, probably. Something small. Small, my father looked confused. But weddings are once-in-a-lifetime events. Don't you want something more elaborate? I shared a look with Michael. We want something that reflects us, small, meaningful within our means. Speaking of weddings, my mother segued not so subtly, Caitlin is having such trouble with the deposits for her venues. Since you're planning something small, perhaps you could help her have the wedding she deserves. Michael squeezed my hand under the table, offering silent support. Mum, I've been clear about this. I'm not funding Caitlin's wedding. The evening deteriorated from there with thinly veiled comments about generosity and family loyalty. Michael and I left early, and the drive home was silent as I struggled with anger and hurt. Your parents don't see what they're doing, Michael observed quietly. They've normalized this dynamic for so long, they can't recognize how unhealthy it is. He was right. And as our relationship deepened, the contrast between his supportive, balanced family and my own became increasingly stark. The true breaking point came 3 months after my engagement. At a family dinner my parents insisted on hosting to bring everyone together. Reluctantly, I agreed to attend, bringing Michael for moral support. Caitlin and Ryan arrived late as usual. My sister was radiant with a new designer handbag I recognized as costing more than a month of her rent. Ryan sported an expensive watch despite supposedly being between jobs again. My father poured wine while my mother fussed over appetizers. Everything seemed civil, if strained. Then Caitlin clinked her glass for attention, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "We have an announcement," she declared, gripping Ryan's hand. "I'm pregnant. You're going to be grandparents." My parents erupted in joy. My mother burst into tears, embracing Caitlin. My father shook Ryan's hand vigorously. Even Michael offered sincere congratulations. I forced a smile and hugged my sister, ignoring the twist of complicated emotions in my stomach. I was happy for her truly, but I also couldn't help wondering how they planned to support a child when they could barely support themselves. As if reading my thoughts, Caitlin continued with her announcement. "And we've found the perfect house. It's a 4-bedroom colonial in Lexington. We put down a deposit yesterday." Lexington was one of the most expensive suburbs in the Boston area. My stomach dropped. "That's a big step," I managed. "How are you financing it?" An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. My father suddenly became very interested in his wine glass. "Well," Caitlin said brightly, "the bank was hesitant because of our credit situation, but we found a workaround." A cold feeling spread through my chest. "What kind of workaround?" "We just need a co-signer with good credit, someone the bank trusts." "No." The word came out automatically, forcefully. "You haven't even heard—" "I don't need to hear it. The answer is no. I will not co-sign a mortgage for you." Ryan spoke up for the first time. It's for your niece or nephew. Don't you want them to grow up in a nice neighborhood with good schools? There are plenty of affordable neighborhoods with good schools, I countered. Ones within your actual budget. My mother reached across the table to touch my arm. Jade, be reasonable. This is an investment in your family's future. It's not an investment, Mom. It's a massive liability. I would be legally responsible for a mortgage I'm certain they can't afford. Caitlin's face flushed with anger. You don't know that Ryan has a promising lead on a management position. Even if he gets it, the math doesn't work. Your combined income couldn't support a mortgage in Lexington. We listed you as a co-applicant, Caitlin admitted, avoiding my eyes. The bank just needs your signature. I felt as though I'd been slapped. You did what, without asking me, we knew you'd make a fuss. A fuss, Caitlin. This is fraud. Again, you can't keep doing this. It's not fraud, Ryan interjected. It's just bending the rules a little. I turned to my parents, expecting them to back me up on this clear violation of boundaries. Instead, my father looked uncomfortable, but said nothing, while my mother gave me a pleading look. Just think about it, Jade, she urged. For the baby. There is nothing to think about, I said, my voice shaking with barely controlled rage. I'm calling the bank tomorrow to remove my name from the application, and if you ever try something like this again, I will press charges, family or not. The room went deadly silent. Then Caitlin's face contorted in fury. You think you're so perfect, don't you? With your fancy job and your perfect fiancé and your responsible life choices. You have no idea what it's like to struggle. I struggle plenty. I shot back. I'm still dealing with the credit damage from the last time you stole my identity. God, you are such a victim. Poor Jade, always sacrificing, always martyring herself for the family while keeping score of every little thing. Keeping score. I've given you thousands of dollars over the years without ever asking for repayment. I've bailed you out of every crisis you've created for yourself. And this is how you repay me, by committing fraud in my name. My mother stood up, her face pale. Girls, please. Let's calm down and discuss this rationally. There's nothing to discuss, I insisted. Caitlin crossed a line. Again. You're just jealous, Caitlin shouted, tears streaming down her face. You're jealous that I'm having a baby and you're not. You're jealous that I've found happiness while you're still the same boring, uptight control freak you've always been. Caitlin, my father admonished, finally speaking up. That's enough, but Caitlin was just getting started. You think you're better than everyone else. You judge every choice I make. You've never supported me, never been happy for me. You ruined my wedding plans, and now you're trying to ruin our chance at a good home for our baby. I stared at her in disbelief. How have I ruined anything? By refusing to bankroll your irresponsible decisions. Yes, she screamed, face red with fury. Yes, that's exactly how you've always had the power to make my life better, and you choose not to. You choose to watch me struggle when you could easily help. That's not fair, Michael interjected quietly. Jade has helped you countless times. Stay out of this, Ryan warned him. This is family business. He is family, I said firmly, or will be soon, and he's right. I've helped you so many times, Caitlin, but there's a difference between helping and enabling, and I'm done enabling you. My mother wrung her hands anxiously. Jade, please. Your sister is under a lot of stress with the pregnancy. Can't you just help this one last time? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mum, they're asking me to commit fraud and take on hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. This isn't about lending them grocery money. You've always been cold, my mother said, surprising me with her sudden shift in tone. Always calculating, always holding back. Would it kill you to be generous for once? The betrayal cut deep. Generous. I've been nothing but generous. I'm the one who's been solving everyone's problems for years. While making sure we all know how superior you are, my father added unexpectedly. Your sister's right. You do judge her choices. Maybe if you'd been more supportive instead of critical, she wouldn't be in this position. Tassin. I felt as though I was in some bizarre alternate reality where everything was backward. So this is my fault, Caitlin's financial irresponsibility, her identity theft, her fraud, that's all because I wasn't supportive enough. You've never understood what your sister needs, my mother said, her voice hard in a way I'd never heard directed at me before. You've always been selfish with your success. Caitlin stood up, pointing at me accusingly. You've ruined everything. My wedding, our house, probably this dinner too. You always have to be right, always have to control everything. That's not true, I protested weakly, feeling outnumbered and increasingly confused. It is true. Caitlin's voice rose to a shriek. Everything was fine until you came back to Boston with your judgmental attitude and your perfect life that you lord over all of us. My parents nodded in agreement, united in their conviction of my guilt. Why don't you just disappear? Caitlin screamed, tears streaming down her flushed face. Nobody wants your so-called help if it comes with all this judgment and superiority. Just go away and leave us alone. I looked at my sister, then at my parents, waiting for someone to defend me, to acknowledge the absurdity of these accusations. No one did. Instead, they stared at me with varying degrees of disappointment and resentment, as if I was indeed the source of all their problems. A strange calm settled over me then. Years of accumulated hurt, resentment, and unmet needs crystallized into a single moment of clarity. These people, my family, would never see me. Not really. They would never value my boundaries or respect my choices. In their narrative, I would always be the villain, the cold, withholding sister who refused to sacrifice enough. I stood up slowly, gathering my purse and jacket. Michael rose beside me, his face tight with controlled anger on my behalf. "Where are you going?" my mother demanded. "We haven't finished discussing this." "Yes, we have," I said quietly. "I think Caitlin's right. I should disappear. Consider me gone." "Oh, stop being so dramatic," my father scoffed. "Sit down and let's work this out like adults." But I was already walking toward the door, Michael's hand supportive at the small of my back. Behind us, Caitlin continued her tirade about my selfishness, my parents adding their own comments about my failure to support family. I closed the door quietly behind us, cutting off the sound of their voices. In the cool evening air, I took my first deep breath in what felt like hours. "Are you okay?" Michael asked, his concern evident. "No," I answered honestly. "But I think I will be." As we drove away from my childhood home, I didn't know it would be the last time I would see my family for nearly 2 years. I didn't know I was driving toward a new life, where I would finally prioritize my own well-being over their endless demands. I just knew I couldn't go back. Not this time. Caitlin had told me to disappear, and after that night, I decided to take her suggestion literally. Why continue to subject myself to a family dynamic that caused nothing but pain? Michael and I accelerated our wedding plans. Instead of the small fall ceremony we'd envisioned, we opted for an intimate gathering just 6 weeks later. 20 guests, all friends and Michael's family, witnessed our vows in a charming garden ceremony. No one from my family attended. I hadn't invited them. The Monday after our honeymoon, I requested a transfer to my company's Seattle office. My manager was surprised but supportive. Within a month, we had sold my Boston house, packed our belongings, and flown across the country to start fresh. I changed my phone number, limited my social media presence, and created a new email address. The only family member who had my new contact information was my cousin Ellie, who had always been kind to me, and who promised to respect my boundaries. The first few weeks in Seattle were a strange mix of liberation and grief. Freedom from the constant drama and demands of my family felt like removing a heavy backpack I'd been carrying for decades. But I also mourned the family I had always wished for, but never really had. Our apartment overlooked Puget Sound, the waters constantly changing with the weather and tides. I would stand at the window during rainy mornings, coffee in hand, and feel the distance from Boston like a physical relief. 3,000 miles between me and the toxic patterns I'd escaped. Michael's unwavering support was my anchor. He never questioned my decision to cut contact, never suggested I was overreacting. Instead, he helped me build a new life filled with genuine connections and mutual respect. "I think I need therapy," I told him one evening about 2 months after our move. "I think that's a great idea," he replied, kissing my forehead. "I'm proud of you for recognizing that. I found a therapist who specialized in family trauma." Dr. Levin listened patiently as I unfolded the complicated origami of my family relationships, helping me see patterns I'd been too close to recognize. "What you're describing is a classic family system with a golden child and a scapegoat," she explained during one session. "Your sister was the golden child who could do no wrong while you were assigned the role of problem solver and emotional support." "But I wasn't a scapegoat," I protested. "They didn't blame me for things." "Until you stopped playing your assigned role," she pointed out gently. "The moment you enforced boundaries, you became the villain in their narrative." Sessions with Dr. Levin were often painful, excavating childhood memories and examining them in a new light. I cried over lost opportunities, over the parental love that had always been conditional, over the sister relationship that had been warped by unhealthy dynamics. "I feel guilty for cutting them off," I admitted during one particularly difficult session. They're my family. Family is supposed to be a source of support and love, Dr. Levin reminded me. When family becomes a source of consistent harm, distance is sometimes the healthiest choice. Slowly, I began to heal. I made friends at work, joined a hiking group, and discovered a passion for photography. Michael and I explored our new city, finding favourite restaurants and weekend getaway spots. We created holiday traditions of our own, spending Thanksgiving with Michael's warm, functional family, who treated me with genuine affection. 6 months after leaving Boston, Ellie called with an update. Caitlin had given birth to a healthy baby girl. They had named her Jade. "I think it's her way of reaching out," Ellie suggested carefully. "She talks about you, sometimes says she misses her big sister." The news left me with complicated feelings. Part of me was touched by the namesake, seeing it as a possible olive branch. Another part wondered if it was just another manipulation tactic, a way to force a connection I wasn't ready for. "How are Mom and Dad?" I asked despite my better judgment. Ellie hesitated. "They're adjusting. Your mum keeps your graduation photo on the mantle. Your dad asked me if I've heard from you." I thanked her for the update, but didn't ask her to pass along any messages. I wasn't ready for that step yet. As Christmas approached, Michael's parents invited us to their home in Chicago. The contrast between their family dynamics and what I had grown up with was stark and healing. His parents disagreed sometimes, but resolved conflicts with respect. Siblings teased but supported each other. Everyone's achievements were celebrated equally. I never knew family could be like this. I confessed to Michael as we packed to return to Seattle. "It feels almost unreal." He hugged me close. "This is how it should be, and this is what our family will be like someday." The thought of creating our own family with healthy patterns and unconditional love became a source of hope and determination. I would break the cycle of favoritism and conditional affection. Any children we might have would grow up knowing they were valued for exactly who they were. By our first anniversary, I had found my footing in our new life. My career was thriving, our social circle was supportive, and my therapy sessions had decreased to monthly check-ins. The sharp pain of family estrangement had dulled to an occasional ache, like an old injury that only bothered me in bad weather. I still thought about them, of course. Wondered how my niece was growing, if Caitlin was adapting to motherhood, if my parents were enjoying being grandparents. But these thoughts no longer consumed me or filled me with debilitating guilt. I had made the right choice for my well-being, and I was finally learning to put myself first after a lifetime of coming last. A full year passed without direct contact from my family. Ellie remained my only connection to Boston, providing occasional updates that I both dreaded and craved. "Your father asked for your address," she told me during one call. "I said I'd ask you if that was okay." "What does he want?" I asked, wariness immediately rising. "He didn't say, just that he wanted to send you something." After discussing it with Michael and Dr. Levin, I agreed to let Ellie share my P.O. box address, a buffer I'd created for exactly this type of situation. 2 weeks later, a certified letter arrived from my father. My hands trembled as I signed for it, unsure what to expect. Inside was a 3-page handwritten letter on my father's formal stationery. The letter began without pleasantries typical of my father's direct style. He explained that Caitlin and Ryan's house in Lexington, which they had somehow managed to purchase, despite my refusal to co-sign, had been foreclosed upon after just 9 months. They had fallen behind on payments almost immediately. My parents had drained a significant portion of their retirement savings to help with the mortgage for several months, but eventually had to stop. The foreclosure had devastated Caitlin, who blamed the bank, the economy, Ryan's employment struggles, everyone but herself. Ryan had not handled the stress well. According to my father, he had become increasingly absent, spending nights out with his band and returning home smelling of alcohol and perfume. 3 months after the foreclosure, he had left Caitlin and their 6-month-old daughter. My parents had taken Caitlin and baby Jade into their home. My father described with unusual emotional detail the challenges of suddenly raising an infant in their 60s, while also supporting their devastated adult daughter. What the letter didn't contain was any acknowledgement of how I had been treated, any apology for the accusations thrown at me during our last encounter, or any recognition that I had been right about Caitlin and Ryan's financial situation. Instead, the letter concluded with a thinly veiled request for help. "Your mother and I are not as young as we once were. Caring for a baby while working full-time is taking its toll. Caitlin is still finding her footing as a single mother. If you were in a position to offer any assistance, it would ease the burden considerably. No, I miss you. No, I'm sorry. Just another request for me to solve a problem I hadn't created. I scanned the letter and sent it to Dr. Levin asking to move our next session earlier. When we met, she helped me process my swirling emotions. Vindication that my concerns about Caitlin and Ryan had been justified sadness. For my niece, growing up in such instability, anger, that even now my father couldn't acknowledge his role in enabling Caitlin's behaviour. "What do you want to do?" Dr. Levin asked after I'd worked through my initial reactions. "Nothing," I decided. I'm not ready to be pulled back into their drama. I didn't respond to my father's letter. Instead, I focused on my own life, which was flourishing in our new home. Michael and I bought a house, a modern craftsman with a view of the mountains. We planted a garden, adopted a rescue dog, and began discussing starting a family of our own. Through Ellie, I learnt that Caitlin had started telling extended family members that I had abandoned them in their time of need, painting herself as the victim of my callousness. My parents' health was suffering from the stress of essentially raising a second family while approaching retirement age. Caitlin was finding herself again, leaving baby Jade with my parents for days at a time while she went on trips with new friends. These updates stirred complicated feelings. Part of me wanted to rush in and rescue everyone, my parents from their exhaustion, my niece from her unstable environment. But the wiser part, the part I'd developed through therapy and distance, recognized that this pattern would never end unless Caitlin was finally forced to face consequences. Still, the thought of my niece, an innocent in all this drama suffering because of adult dysfunction, troubled me deeply. After lengthy discussions with Michael and Dr. Levin, I set up a 529 college savings plan for baby Jade, making anonymous monthly contributions. It wasn't much, but it was something I could do without directly engaging with my family's chaos. Michael supported my decision wholeheartedly. "You're creating a safety net for her future without enabling the problematic behavior. I think that's a wise compromise." As our second year in Seattle drew to a close, we received news that would change everything. I was pregnant. The joy of impending parenthood filled our home along with the inevitable anxieties and preparations. We transformed the guest room into a nursery, attended childbirth classes, and chose names. "Do you want to tell your family?" Michael asked as my pregnancy progressed. I considered it carefully. "Not yet. Maybe after the baby is born." The truth was, I wasn't sure I wanted them to know at all. The thought of my child being subjected to the same dynamics that had damaged me, the favoritism, the conditional love, the manipulation filled me with protective fury. Yet completely denying my child access to their extended family also felt extreme. "We'll set boundaries," Michael assured me, seeming to read my thoughts. "Our child will never experience what you did." I believed him, but still I hesitated. Some wounds were still too fresh, some fears too deep. As my due date approached, I found myself thinking more about my own mother. Despite our complicated relationship, I wished I could ask her questions about her pregnancies, about giving birth, about those early days of motherhood. The estrangement felt heavier as I prepared to cross this threshold into parenthood myself. I confessed these feelings to Dr. Levin. "Does this mean I should reach out to them?" "Missing the mother you wished you had during this transition is natural," she said gently. "But remember that contacting your actual mother comes with all the complicated dynamics that led to your estrangement. There's no right or wrong answer here, only what feels right for you." In the end, I didn't reach out. Instead, I leaned on Michael's mother, who flew out to stay with us for a month around my due date, and on the supportive female friends I'd made in Seattle. They threw me a baby shower, shared their own motherhood stories, and promised to be there when I needed advice or help. My daughter was born on a rainy Seattle morning in April, 7 pounds 6 ounces of perfection, with Michael's dark hair and my green eyes. We named her Lily, a name that symbolized renewal and rebirth, fitting for a child who represented a new chapter in our family story. As I held her in those first precious days, I made her silent promises. I would see her for exactly who she was. I would celebrate her uniqueness, rather than trying to mold her into who I thought she should be. I would protect her from toxic relationships, even if those relationships were with family members. And most importantly, I would break the cycle that had shaped my own childhood. The patterns would end with me. This morning, I woke to the sound of rain against our bedroom window and Lily's soft babbling through the monitor. A typical Seattle morning in our peaceful home until I checked my phone and found 14 missed calls from my parents' number. My heart immediately raced. 14 calls. Something was wrong. Michael stirred beside me. "What is it?" My parents called 14 times. I showed him the screen, my hands slightly shaking. He sat up instantly alert. "Are there any messages?" Several. I confirmed seeing the voicemail notifications. I hadn't spoken to them in almost 2 years. Why the sudden urgency? Do you want to listen to them? Michael asked gently. I nodded, though my stomach clenched with anxiety. I put the phone on speaker so Michael could hear too. The first message began with my mother's voice strained and tearful. Jade, it's Mom. Please call us back as soon as you get this. Caitlin's been in an accident. It's serious. Please, honey. We need you. My blood ran cold. Despite everything, Caitlin was still my sister. The thought of her injured or worse sent a wave of nausea through me. The second message provided more details. My mother explained that Caitlin had been driving in heavy rain, lost control of her car, and hit a guardrail. She was in the hospital with multiple injuries, but was expected to recover. The doctors say she'll need extensive physical therapy. We don't know how we're going to manage everything. Subsequent messages chronicled Caitlin's condition, stabilized, moved from intensive care to a regular room facing a long recovery. The 10th message, left around midnight, took a different tone. It was my father's voice, sounding older and more tired than I remembered. Jade, it's Dad. I don't know if you're even getting these messages, but I hope you are. I've been doing a lot of thinking these past few days, sitting in hospital waiting rooms. About Caitlin, about you, about the kind of parents your mother and I have been. I glanced at Michael, surprised by the introspective tone. He squeezed my hand encouragingly. We failed you, Jade. My father continued, his voice breaking slightly. We put too much on your shoulders from such a young age. We expected you to be the strong one, the responsible one, while we coddled your sister. And when you finally stood up for yourself, we punished you for it. I'm sorry. We're both sorry. Tears filled my eyes at words I'd never expected to hear. The final message, left just an hour ago, was again from my father. Caitlin's coming home tomorrow. She's asking for you. I understand if you don't want to speak to any of us again. We've given you plenty of reason to stay away. But if there's any chance you might consider reconnecting, even just to talk, please call. We miss you, Jade. All of us. I set the phone down, emotions swirling too intensely to immediately process. What do you want to do? Michael asked after a moment. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to help, especially after hearing Dad's apology. But another part is afraid of being pulled back into the same old patterns. Michael nodded, understanding. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. But that apology sounded genuine to me. After feeding Lily and getting her settled with Michael, I called Dr. Levin for an emergency phone session. She helped me work through my conflicting feelings and establish boundaries for any potential reconnection. Remember that you're in control of how much contact you have, she reminded me. You can start with a phone call and see how it feels. You don't have to make any long-term decisions right away. I spent the morning weighing my options, holding Lily, and thinking about family, the one I'd created and the one I'd left behind. By afternoon, I had made my decision. With shaking hands, I dialed my father's number. He answered on the first ring. Jade. His voice was disbelieving, hopeful. Hi, Dad. You called. He sounded on the verge of tears. Thank you for calling. I got your messages. I'm sorry about Caitlin's accident. How is she? She's in pain but stable. Coming home today. The baby, your niece, she's been asking for her mom. I closed my eyes, picturing a toddler missing her injured mother. That must be hard for everyone. A heavy silence fell between us, 2 years of unspoken words, creating a chasm neither of us knew how to bridge. Jade, my father finally said, his voice stronger. I meant what I said in my message. We failed you. I failed you. As your father, I should have protected you, supported you. Instead, I helped create a situation that drove you away. I understand now why you left, and I don't blame you. I hadn't expected such a direct acknowledgement. It loosened something tight in my chest. That means a lot to hear, Dad. Your mother and I have done a lot of soul-searching since you left. Having to raise little Jade while Caitlin, well, she's struggling to be the mother she should be. It's given us perspective on how we treated you. We placed adult responsibilities on you when you were just a child yourself. I wiped away tears. Yes, you did. I know an apology doesn't erase the past, but I hope it might be a starting point for the future, if you're willing. We talked for nearly an hour. He told me about their lives, the challenges of raising a toddler in their 60s, Caitlin's continued struggles with responsibility, their growing recognition of the unhealthy family dynamics they'd created. I told him about our life in Seattle, about Michael's career success, and finally about Lily. I have a granddaughter. His voice broke. Jade, that's wonderful. What's her name? Lily. She's 4 months old now. I wish I wish we could meet her someday. When you're ready, if you're ever ready. When we ended the call, I felt emotionally drained but somehow lighter. The conversation hadn't erased the past, but it had opened a door I thought was permanently closed. Over the next few weeks, I had several more phone calls with my parents. I sent photos of Lily and received pictures of my niece, now a curly-haired toddler with Caitlin's blue eyes. I spoke briefly with Caitlin, whose subdued manner suggested her accident had perhaps induced some reflection of her own. 3 months after that first call, Michael and I decided to visit Boston. We would stay in a hotel not with my parents, and would set clear boundaries about the length and nature of our visits. It was a step toward reconciliation, but with eyes wide open to the pitfalls of old patterns. The reunion was emotionally charged, but largely positive. My parents seemed genuinely overjoyed to meet Lily, handling her with a tenderness I hadn't often seen in my own childhood. My mother cried when she held her, whispering apologies I couldn't quite catch. Seeing Caitlin was the most difficult part. She was physically changed by the accident, moving carefully with a slight limp, her once perfect appearance now marked by a scar along her jawline. But the most significant change was in her demeanor. The entitled arrogance had been replaced by a quieter, more reflective presence. "I don't know what to say to make things right," she admitted during a private moment. "I was horrible to you, for years." "You were," I agreed, not willing to minimize the past. The accident made me think about a lot of things, about how I've treated people, about the example I'm setting for my daughter. She glanced at her toddler playing contentedly with my parents. "I don't want her to grow up to be like I was." It wasn't a complete apology, but it was more self-awareness than I'd ever heard from her before. My niece, little Jade, was a delight, spirited and affectionate, greeting me with an immediate hug as if she somehow recognized her namesake. Watching her play with my parents, I saw both the joy she brought them and the strain of their caretaking responsibilities. "Caitlin still goes out a lot," my mother confided during our visit. "She says she needs space to heal, but..." She didn't finish the thought, but she didn't need to. Some patterns hadn't changed. As our visit concluded, my father pulled me aside. "Will you stay in touch this time?" "Yes," I promised. "But things need to be different. I can't go back to the old dynamics." "We understand," he said, and I wanted to believe him. The journey back to Seattle gave me time to reflect on the visit. It hadn't been perfect. Old tensions had surfaced at times, and I'd noticed my parents still making excuses for some of Caitlin's behavior. But there had also been genuine moments of connection and contrition that gave me hope for a healthier relationship moving forward. In the months that followed, we established a new normal, weekly video calls, occasional care packages, exchanged honest conversations about the past and present. I maintained firm boundaries, refusing to be drawn into financial entanglements or excessive caretaking roles, but allowing myself to reconnect emotionally with my family on new terms. Dr. Levin helped me navigate this complex terrain. "Reconciliation doesn't mean forgetting," she reminded me. "It means creating a new relationship with clear boundaries and mutual respect." True healing, I came to understand, wasn't about erasing the painful past or pretending it never happened. It wasn't about achieving some perfect family harmony that had never existed in the first place. It was about acknowledging the reality of our shared history while choosing to move forward with greater awareness and healthier patterns. I couldn't change my sister or my parents completely. I couldn't erase decades of ingrained behavior with a few months of reconnection, but I could control my own responses. I could model healthy boundaries for my daughter. I could break the cycle of enabling and codependency that had defined our family for generations. As Lily grew from an infant to a toddler, delighting us with her curious nature and independent spirit, I made sure she knew she was valued simply for being herself. When we visited Boston or my parents came to Seattle, I watched carefully for signs of favoritism between the cousins, addressing it immediately if it appeared. The relationship between our families will never be perfect. My sister still struggles with responsibility. My parents still occasionally fall into old patterns. But we are all trying in our imperfect ways to create something better than what came before. Sometimes distance is necessary for healing. Sometimes walking away is the only path forward. But sometimes, if the conditions are right, if genuine remorse is expressed and boundaries are respected, reconciliation becomes possible. My worth is no longer defined by my family's validation. My value doesn't depend on how much I sacrifice for others. This hard-won wisdom is perhaps the greatest gift I can pass on to my daughter, the knowledge that she deserves respect simply for existing, that her boundaries matter, that love should never require the diminishment of self. The journey continues with all its complications and uncertainties. But now I walk it on my own terms stronger, for having faced the truth, braver for having chosen my own path, wiser for understanding that family ties can be reimagined rather than simply accepted or rejected. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved for your own well-being? Did you eventually reconnect, or was the separation permanent? Please share your experiences in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if my story resonated with you. Thank you for listening, and remember that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is put yourself first.